Hello, my name is Katia Altamirano. I am the Director of Arts Education and Art Curator here at Arts Garage. And today I have the privilege of sitting with Dr. Gary Rose, who is also going to be a featured artist in our October exhibition, Changes Art Through a Climate Lens, which opens on Friday, October 1st. We invite you to the gallery opening from 6 to 8 p.m. on Friday, October 1st. Now, Dr. Gary Rose has always lived his life with passion. At a young age, he was greatly influenced by the photography and writing of Jacques Cousteau and subsequently fell in love with the sea. He is an avid self-taught underwater photographer and writer and has published numerous articles in Alert Diver magazine and X-Ray magazine. In addition, he lectures all over the world on shark behavior and identification. As a surgeon and scuba instructor, he teaches international courses to other divers on diving medicine. He was an internationally well-known plastic surgeon who has lectured and performed surgeries all over the world and has published over 30 peer-reviewed journals, articles, and book chapters. He has written 2 books on how to get into medical school. Gary lives by the sea in Highland Beach. And welcome, Dr. Rose.
Thank you so much, Katia. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us. Or thank you for being here. So, let's start off with just what have you seen in the 50 years that you have been diving the local shores?
Wow. I've seen changes that were unimaginable 50 years ago. When I first came here in the early 70s and got certified as a scuba diver, our oceans here locally were every bit as beautiful and prolific as you would see in the Bahamas or the Indies or Pacific Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
I remember coming home from work, well, my internship and residency, driving to the A1A
Mm-hmm.
down Palmetto Park Road, or Atlantic even, parking right on the beach by the sand,
Right.
going out and shooting a couple grouper or snappers, picking up a couple conch and lobster and having dinner. Today, those reefs are not sick, they're gone. I remember diving back in the 70s and 80s,
Mm-hmm.
where 360 days a year, the water visibility was at least 100 to 150 feet, sometimes 200 feet. Today, we call it a good day if it's 40 or 50 feet.
Wow.
There's been a lot of change, but the one that sickens me and makes me feel the worst is the not dying, but the dead reefs.
Mm-hmm.
They're dead, and I just pray we can bring them back.
Definitely, definitely. So, what other major changes have you seen? Because I know we were talking about this previously, and you had mentioned the sea urchins.
Yeah, I'm an observer. As a doctor, I'm also a scientist. I've
Mm-hmm.
published a lot, I've innovated a lot, and I like to put together separate events to see if I can unify them. And I started noticing the big changes in the reef, lack of health in the late 70s. And no one really knew what the coral bleaching then was from.
Right.
But people thought maybe change in salinity or water temperature, air temperature. There wasn't as much coastal building as we have today, and nowhere near the amount of sewage that's dumped. Add to that, now they dump Lake O, that horrible nitrite and nitrate-filled phosphored water into the ocean all summer long, and not only is it killing the reefs, it's killing everything. But what happened was in the 70s and then in the 80s, there were some major coral bleaching events. Particularly in 1983, it was thought that perhaps the bleaching came from a ship that emptied its bilge that had toxins that killed off the diadema, which are the long-spined sea urchins. Well, over the next few decades, watching the NOAA reports and the NASA reports, it became very clear to me that that's not the issue at all. The issue, and this might surprise you, and if you've been living here in Florida this past year, you're very aware of it. I think, and there's enough evidence from NASA, NOAA, and Princeton University to show that the big problem is the Sahara dust. There were large amounts of Sahara dust that traversed the Atlantic in the very years of the major kill-offs. And the year 83, when the diadema, the sea urchins, died, there was a massive amount of Sahara dust in the air. We can look at 1991 when the staghorn and elkhorn corals disappeared here in Florida. A year later, they disappeared in Jamaica. And a few years later, they started disappearing in most of the Keys.
Wow.
Always to be correlated with Sahara dust. Why Sahara dust? I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
The reason is the dust, not only does it carry a lot of nitrates, which cause algae blooms, which I'll get back to in a moment,
Right.
but they have also found, and this was startling to me, being that I've been teaching microbiology for 18 years, just recently retired from that, but the dust carries fungus, bacteria, and viruses. One fungus I was shocked to learn was Aspergillus. This is the same fungus that we worry about in homes in Florida if there's mold when you want to sell a home. Aspergillus is also particularly virulent and deadly to people that are immunocompromised. Thankfully, we haven't been able to relate any deaths to the Aspergillus to humans, but there is a very, very, very prominent increase in asthma cases throughout the Caribbean, particularly in Barbados and Trinidad. And they're closely watching this in the Virgin Islands and perhaps maybe the increasing asthma we're seeing here as a result of that. So the Sahara dust had a multi-pronged attack. Pesticides, toxins, microbials. It kills the coral. Add to that global warming, just 2 degrees elevation in the water temperature is enough to kill off a reef. Dumpage of sewage. Where is all our stuff going? It's going out to sea. It just doesn't disappear. They pump it out to sea. And then the runoff from Lake O with all the pesticides, the lack of oxygen in that water, and the algae blooms.
Wow.
Coral needs algae, and algae needs coral. The coral presents a matrix for which algae can hide, survive, and get the metabolic byproducts of coral metabolism. Algae eats the ammonia of the coral, and then through photosynthesis produces oxygen, which oxygenates the coral and the reef. Well, what happened was the diadema, the sea urchins were killed. The changes that I mentioned in addition, there are algae blooms all over the reef. And those of us that dive, we see this everywhere. There's algae that suffocated the reef, and the polyps cannot grow. The coral can no longer grow. So these are all problems that I have seen and been able to put together. And this isn't just my theory. This comes from NASA and Princeton University. I believe it's Princeton.
Okay.
And it's amazing. It's just absolutely horrifying. And I hope that we can, I'm an optimist. I think we can fix this. I truly think that as humans, as Americans, we have the ability to solve any problem. And right now I know there's a great movement to start letting the water from Lake O filter back through the Everglades, stop dumping it up here, or let the Everglades regrow. But we have to get rid of the sewage runoff. We have to not have the earth warm up so much as we see with these superstorms. And I can go on and on.
Oh no, definitely. I am also a firm believer that, any little thing that we can do to help make a change collectively will make a bigger change
Absolutely.
that way. Now, you talked about sharks, and we have some artwork here on the stage, and I have a piece over here to my left. Remind me the name of the shark.
That particular shark is a silky shark.
A silky shark.
And it's called a silky shark because the shark scales, and they're sort of like fish scales, but they're more like mini teeth. On most sharks, when you run your hand on their surface, it feels like sandpaper. But the denticles, the shark scales, on a silky shark are so small and so fine, when you run your fingers on the surface, it feels like silk. They're absolutely stunning, gorgeous animals. And the colors that you see in this particular photo, the coppery upper body and the silvery lower body, that's exactly how they look in the sea.
Well, one of the things that was striking, aside from how awesome the picture is, was you had told me you took this picture and recently ran into the same shark. So I'm just, the way nature heals itself was awesome.
Sharks are amazing. They don't get infections. They just don't. And there's a lot of studies, not a lot, there are numerous studies going on to find out what it is in the immunity system of sharks that allows them not to get infected.
Hmm.
And they heal. I mean, part of the normal mating ritual of all sharks is the male will bite pretty ferociously, if you've ever seen it,
Hmm.
uh, right on the top of the head or by the dorsal fin of the female when they get together. I'll keep it
Awesome.
clean.
Awesome.
But they leave huge rents,
Mm.
huge wounds, and they all heal. They heal well. So this shark healed well. When I see her, I identify her, and she's doing great.
Awesome. So, from your perspective as a diver, as a doctor, and as an artist, what could we do to help, you know, give our ocean a fighting chance? Because one of the major downfalls is with all the climate changes and pollution that is happening here locally, it's causing the king tides, which is why we're having this discussion, which correlates to the climate and art event that is being put together by the city of Delray Beach.
Well,
So,
let me comment that tangentially.
okay,
At the exhibit, you'll notice the photos that I have are all of sharks.
correct.
I love sharks. I love doing wide angle photography with sharks. It's taken many years of being in the water with them to understand their behavior, and each species has a different behavior, and then how to predict where they'll be to take the photos. But I particularly wanted to use sharks for this exhibit because sharks, as apex predators, are an excellent monitor for the health of our oceans. Where you see a lot of sharks, you have a very healthy ocean. Where there's an absence of sharks, the sea is in trouble. An example was up in North Carolina a few years ago. They killed all the sharks through fishing and purposely killing them off the coast. And in that particular area, the stingrays, which were the favorite food of that particular area of the sharks, just grew and grew and grew their populations. And then, therefore, they ate their favorite food, which was scallops. So now the area of North Carolina, which was a major scallop producer, has no scallops. Stingrays are gone. The sharks are gone.
Wow.
So that's an example. But here in our local Florida waters, sharks have a very, very important purpose. They're like the immune system of the ocean.
Okay.
When the immune system is out of balance, you see that in illness.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing here. Sharks will eat sick or weak large fish. Now, if those larger fish are not eliminated or at least controlled in their populations like the rays up in North Carolina, the large fish like bonita, barracuda, and others then start eating smaller fish down the food chain.
Right.
And you wipe out the herbivores. Those are the fish that eat the algae on the reefs.
Mm.
So if you eliminate the parrotfish, if you eliminate the snappers, if you eliminate the small reef fish because up the chain keeps eating them, then there's another reason why the reefs will die.
Yeah.
And you have all these big predators out that are eating up the grouper and the snapper, which are the healthy fish that we want to preserve.
Right.
So we see sharks, we know we have a healthy sea.
Oh, that doesn't appease my fear of sharks. I think this is the closest I've been to sharks.
Actually, you've probably been closer and just didn't know it.
Probably, but I don't want to think that. I don't want to think that. So, what other recommendations do you have that we could do?
All right, a few things. One, we need to get rid of helium-filled balloons. First, helium is a very limited resource we have on the planet Earth. We're running out of helium. We need it in so many ways, and to use it frivolously to fill up balloons for birthdays and anniversaries is ridiculous. But the balloons go out to sea, and then they get involved in the food chain. They can strangle sea mammals that eat them and other animals, or they get caught in that gyre of plastic that just keeps circulating and circulating.
Yeah.
We can eliminate plastic.
Yes, I was just thinking that the plastic bags that look like the jellyfish.
Yes, and sea turtles eat those and
Mm-hmm.
and they die.
Yeah.
They get strangulated. We have to just be aware of not throwing garbage in the ocean.
Yeah.
We also need to not flush our toilets 100 times a day.
Mm.
Conserve on sewage output.
Right.
Uh, Also, when you're out at the beach or if you're on a boat, wear a coral-friendly sunblock. Many of the sunblocks have toxins in them for coral. And I'm not going to plug any company, but you can go online and look up
Definitely.
reef-friendly, ocean-friendly sunblock.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just as a normal, empathetic human being, let's forget politics for a moment. Politics doesn't exist. We're all one race under one sun on one planet. We need to get together and speak to our congressmen, speak to our businesses, speak to our entrepreneurs, and develop alternative energy sources.
Mm-hmm.
Electric cars aren't the answer. They leave a huge footprint of carbon because the electricity has to be generated from somewhere. We need to get to hydrogen-powered cars
Mm-hmm.
and trucks and industry, or oxygen-powered like we
Yeah.
saw in that last space.
I was recently
Yeah.
speaking to someone that was talking about how you can plant native plants to Florida and help reduce your own carbon footprint so that at least what your car is putting out is kind of getting
Wouldn't,
offset.
wouldn't it be great to not only offset it, but just put it out there to make it positive
Right?
and eliminate the carbon that we're
Yes.
putting out?
I'm a huge supporter of planning, reinstating local plant life
Yep.
because it's going to do the best here.
Now, I live here, you live here, and
Yes.
it's easy for me to say we have to stop building these huge tracts of homes that have big parking lots that radiate heat, that cause more runoff. If it wasn't for building here, we wouldn't live here.
Correct.
But we have to come to a point where we have to start controlling that.
Yeah. Be a little bit more mindful, definitely.
Yep.
Definitely. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I do have some other work here, and I'm going to quickly name our featured artist for the October Climate and Art exhibition. We have Michelle Winehouse and Marianne Canuso. And in selecting the work, I was trying to find something that showcased Delray. And Delray, I've lived in a lot of different places, but Delray is kind of very special to me because it just has so many different things. We have natural wildlife, we have the ocean, we have the city. It has like all these little really cool pockets, and I've been here for almost 5 years, and I'm constantly discovering new places. So with Michelle's work, it was to showcase the things above the water. With your work, it was showcasing below the water. And with Marianne's work, it was showcasing just a combination of repurposing. She repurposes glass and shells and things that she finds or buys and turns them into these art pieces. And as an artist myself, trying to be more conscientious about the environment, I'm actively trying to repurpose things instead of using something new. So yes, thank you. Anything else to add?
We can talk for hours.
Oh, definitely.
I just say we have to start thinking that we're all one
Yes.
and we all need to work together. It's no longer we'll push it off another decade
No.
or another 20 years. It's happening now. And these superstorms that we're seeing, these tides, the flooding, the fires, it's happening now. And we need to all be responsible.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you for listening. And again, I do invite you to come out on Friday, October 1st from 6 to 8 p.m. to Arts Garage in downtown Delray to see the full exhibition hanging on the walls.
Thank you.